Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Quarles-Mowrer, and I would like to welcome you all to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. We welcome all of you who ventured out on this lovely day to be with us this morning here in the sanctuary. We welcome those of you who chose to join us on Zoom, and we welcome those of you who are choosing to visit us online and feel the us. With all the choices we have on Sunday morning, I know Sunday mornings are super busy for everyone. I'm so glad that you all chose to be with us this morning. This morning we have piano played by the lovely Quarles-Mowrer. We have Justine doing her tech this morning. Thank you guys for helping out. For over 50 years, the UU has been a liberal religious voice in the Pottstown area. As we are UUs, we believe that reason and faith aren't in conflict at all. We can have both. We believe that we honor the wisdom of the past, even as we acknowledge that the past doesn't have all the answers. One of the ways that we honor the past is by learning from it and never repeating. We believe that there are questions out there to explore and that it's our job, it's our right, our responsibility to keep looking for the answers to those questions. But perhaps most importantly, we believe that no one is excluded from the circle of justice and compassion. So we hope this morning that your spirit and your mind and your heart are all touched as we commit once again to our guiding principles. We come together on Sunday mornings, not because we share a creed, but because we share a promise. We promise one another that we will support each other and love each other along our spiritual journeys. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, we are so glad you chose to be with us today. And now we have a moment for announcements. So if you have an announcement, I invite you to come up to the front and use the microphone and introduce yourself to everyone know who you are.
The Catholic Church, when a pope dies or passes on, there's a period where there is no pope sitting in his chair, and it is called in Latin sedi vacanti, the empty chair. I thought it only appropriate to have an empty chair to honor our now recently deceased old member, Albert. Just may we remember him for his wisdom that he provided for us each week, the lovely stories and recountings that I think is what it's all so much. So, in honor of Albert.
I'm Linda. A couple of announcements. First of which, there is a board meeting this Saturday via Zoom, 10 a.m., which then means there will be a committee council meeting Thursday via Zoom at 8. Is it 8 o'clock, Rick?
Yeah.
Okay. The last announcement that I will make again is New Earth Traditions, the individuals that rent our fellowship, is going to be holding a nature summer camp here at our fellowship. And while they're not affiliated with us, it is an open enrollment. It is the week of June 26th through 30th. I've got flyers and the information, so if you're looking for something, and they are taking children from ages 0 to 12. So if you want more information about it, again, it's held here. It's not affiliated with us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now it's the time to light our chalice. Thank you, Monica. We light our chalice this morning with the words of Amaret Calloway. In the memory of all the flames that didn't die in the midst of darkness, and in spite of the darkness, we light our flame today. Now is my weekly reminder, even in this time when technology is so vital in connecting us, it can also separate us if we're checking our phones during service. So it's time to put yourself on mute, which I am also doing because my phone is blowing up. One of my kids just threw up all over Dick's Sporting Goods. All right, so put your notifications on the silent, take a moment, Take a breath. Rest your eyes. Listen to the sound of the chime. So tomorrow evening is Yom HaShoah, that's how we refer to it in the US. Jared Safran, writing for the Philadelphia Jewish Exponent, reminds us that the day actually does have a full name, and the full name that the Hebrew that I'm going to butcher right now is Yom HaZikaron LaShoah Beta Luvra, which means the day of remembrance of the Holocaust and the bravery. Yom HaShoah is celebrated to remember the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto, which was one of the biggest acts of resistance during the Holocaust. Zev Elef, president of Gratz College and scholar of American Jewish history, believes that it is important to celebrate Yom HaShoah, not just to remember the tragedy, but also to celebrate the agency of the Jewish people, and to remind the world that people fight back against oppression. Harry Mooney wrote a special remembrance ceremony for this occasion. That's what we'll be using for opening words this morning. Remembering Yom HaShoah. Today we light a candle of remembrance. I'm gonna go down and light it. These masks made of asbestos. Okay. We light candles of remembrance for April 19th in 1943, when the Jewish community in the Warsaw Ghetto rose up against their captors in a valiant effort to regain their freedom and return a common humanity to those intent on destroying their very existence. Jews all around the world pay tribute to Yom HaShoah on 27 Nisan, a day commemorating what we call the Holocaust. The word Shoah literally means catastrophe. We light the candles because anytime life is annihilated, we are all diminished. The light reminds us that we hold both the responsibility and the privilege to live lives that work for justice for all, but especially for those who are marginalized and oppressed. We work for those whose stories we have not yet heard enough to change our hearts and our way of living. These words were scratched onto a wall in Auschwitz to remind us to listen further, that we might remember. I believe in the sun even when it isn't shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when silent. So for all those intentions which rest in our silent sanctuary or in our hearts, may the light of this flame burn brightly and give you peace. And now we'll join in singing our first hymn of the day. This is View the Starry Realm. And like Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, this hymn was written by Unitarian minister Norbert Chapek. I pronounce his name poorly every time, sorry. These words, so if you don't know the history of Norbert Chapek, he lived in New Jersey for a long time, and then he decided that he was going to go back to Transylvania and found a church. And I've actually got my notes here. He founded the first Unitarian Universalist church in Prague. And he actually also made the flower communion that we often celebrate. And in 1941, he and his daughter, who was also an ordained minister, were picked up by the Gestapo for listening to broadcasts that were not appropriate. They said that they were being that they weren't being patriotic enough, and they were listening to unpatriotic Sorry, there were no podcasts back then. So his daughter was sent to prison for 18 months because she had actually written about these things that she heard. And he was supposed to only be sent to prison for 12 months. But one of the Gestapo commanders decided that his writings and his beliefs were so radical that he should be sent to Dachau. So they sent him to Dachau, and this hymn that we are about to sing was actually written by him while he was behind bars. And he did not know. Knew the starry realm. Now it's time for a story. So whether you are young in body or in spirit, you're welcome to join us at the front of the sanctuary.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Ruby, and I have our story for all ages today. And it's a book called The Garden of Hope. And it's written by Isabel Otter and Katie Roos. Has anyone ever heard of this book before? I hadn't either. Things had changed since Mom had been gone. The house was untidy. Maya, Dad, and Pip were a bit of a mess, and the garden had become wild and overgrown. Dad was trying his best, but sometimes it was hard to remember all the things that needed to be done. Maya sometimes felt lonely, but luckily she had Pip. Who do you guys think Pip is? is her dog. Of course, there were moments when it was impossible not to miss Mom. When Maya felt sad, Dad was always there for a big hug. He was a great storyteller, and he told Maya tales of magic and adventures in faraway lands. She particularly enjoyed the stories when Dad wrote her and Pip into the plot as brave characters. One afternoon, Maya was feeling sad and a little bit anxious. You know what anxious means, guys? Means like nervous, like afraid of what might happen. Dad said it was time for a story. This one was going to be about Mom. Maya stopped biting her nails and looked up. Dad hardly ever told stories about Mom. You know, your mom used to worry about things too, don't you, Maya? Said Dad. Whenever she felt upset, she would go outside, plant some seeds, and wait for them to grow into something new and beautiful. Your mom knew that by the time the seeds had grown, those worries would have faded away. She called them her seeds of hope. On the table were several packets of seeds. Dad and Maya looked out at the overgrown garden and shared a smile. Maya started in the potting shed. It was full of dust and cobwebs, but soon she found what she needed. Next, she began to busily pull up weeds. The garden had been unloved for a long time, and the weeds had tangled themselves into everything. And at last, the ground was ready. It was time to plant the first seed. Maya chose the packet with the bright sunflower on the front. It was Mom's favorite flower. As she dug a hole, Maya thought about Dad's story. She dropped the first seed in, closed her eyes, and hoped. Some days were harder than others for Maya, but thinking about the garden made her feel calm. When the first small green shoot appeared, Maya felt a rush of happiness. The seed had become something new and beautiful. Sometimes Pip tried to help in his own way. Luckily, holes could always be filled in again. Sometimes Dad felt angry or upset, and when he did, he joined Maya in the garden, and they planted seeds together. Buds were starting to appear in some of the plants. Maya spent all her spare time outside, rain or shine, nurturing her garden. Do you guys, who knows what nurturing means? It means taking care of something, helping it along. In turn, the garden repaid Maya's love by making her feel lighter and happier than she had felt in a very long time. Maya now had some fully grown plants and flowers, as well as seedlings. The flowers began to bloom, and this attracted new visitors. First came the bees and the butterflies. Then came ladybirds, dragonflies, and beetles. And the birds, okay. Birds arrived, and with them, voles and hedgehogs. Finally came rabbits, squirrels, and foxes. The garden was humming, hopping, buzzing, and bursting with new life. Maya had transformed the garden into a place of beauty once more. Mom had been right. Maya had forgotten the worries she had planted with the seeds. The garden had carried them away. Things had changed since Mom had been gone. The house was still untidy. Maya, Dad, and Pip were still rather a mess, but something felt different. For the first time in a long while, there was hope. Dad and Maya looked out at their beautiful garden and shared a smile. So guys, at the beginning of the book, how was Maya feeling? Sad, that's right. And why? Yeah, I think she missed her mom. Sorry. Um, and so then what did she do to make herself feel better? Yeah. And when she first planted them, how did she feel? Happy. How else? Calm. Calm. Why do you think she felt calm? It's relaxing. What about if you're nervous about something? Does it make you feel better to sit there and worry about it? No. Does it make you feel better to go out and do something good? Yeah, I think so too. So guys, what is hope? So you said, I hope the chair would be fixed by Saturday, and it was. The dictionary defines hope as a feeling of desire and expectation for a certain thing to happen. So after planting her seeds, what does Maya expect to happen? For them to grow, yes. And has anyone heard the expression cultivating hope? Cultivating means prepare the ground for planting, or raise, grow, and nurture plants or a skill. And so what do you think cultivating hope means? Miss Emily says she thinks hope is a skill that you can learn. So do our dreams just happen by themselves? No, that's right. We need to nurture and take care of our dreams, just like we would for a garden. How did Maya feel after her garden started to grow? Happy, yeah. And why? How do you think she felt when she looked at her garden? Happy? Because why? I'm going to open this up to some. Oh.
Because it looks so beautiful.
That was my #1 answer, because it looked so beautiful. Any other thoughts? It looked beautiful. Who thinks that maybe Maya was proud of what she had done? What about seeing that the plants were doing well? What about animals that came that maybe didn't have a home before? They didn't have things to eat. Now they did. Cora, did you have something? Or were you just agreeing with what I said? Okay. Maybe her mom liked to garden. Do you think maybe she felt good doing something that her mom liked to do? Yeah, it kind of made her feel closer to her mom, maybe. And maybe she just liked to feel like she could make things better. So guys, when you feel anxious or sad, what do you do, or what can you do to feel better? Go to your room and play? That's a good one. Play with your American Girl dolls? Oliver,
I rest.
you rest? Anyone else? So the next time you need to feel better, I think you guys have some great ideas of things you can try. Don't you think? Me too. Thank you all. Now let's sing the kids to their classroom.
Now is the time for the morning offering. When we give, we say yes to something we value, and that's true every single day. So when you give here, you're saying yes to valuing the work we do here, the community we find here, and the beautiful environment that we have. In spirit of trust and generosity, we gratefully accept this morning's offering. We're so glad you said yes to us. And now I am very sad to share with you that longtime member Albert Jenkins passed away this Thursday. He hadn't been feeling very well for several weeks, but he was always happy when he was able to come to be with us at UUMP. And I feel so blessed that he was able to come last week and share that beautiful service with all the kids. Really wonderful. Family was really important to Albert, and he reminded us often that family is not necessarily about who you're born to, but it's created and strengthened the bonds of love. So my heart goes out to all the circles of family that Albert's life touched. He had a circle of family around the dining table at Pottsgrove Manor. He had a circle of family of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren on the West Coast. He had a family of his heritage. He was very, very proud of his Cornish heritage, and he loved to go to the events to celebrate that. And he had his family here at the UUMP, where his absence leaves a hole in our hearts. So at this point in the service, I'm going to open up the mic for anyone who wishes to share a memory of Albert. But since I'm up here, I'm going to go first. And that way you guys all have a chance to organize your thoughts. So the memory I wanted to share with you all was that Albert really liked to read sci-fi. And we bonded over a couple of sci-fi books that we both liked. We both read the Foreigner series by C.J. Cherryh, and the Honor Harrington series by David Weber. And he was such an avid fan of the Royal Montefiore Navy. He loved the way that they talked about the ranks and tactics in those David Weber books. And so he actually had he joined the family there, and he had a rank in either the Royal Manticorean or possibly the Grayson Space Navy, but he actually joined the band and got a rank, and he had like even singing and everything. So I will miss his unabashed enthusiasm for everything he loves. So anyone would like to come up and share a memory?
Hi, I'm CJ Rhodes. Albert was one of my favorite people in this congregation. Sometimes it wasn't my first choice to listen to his stories, but every time I started listening to his stories, I always enjoyed it in the end, because he just, his own enthusiasm for the things that he loved would just come through. And one of the things that I remember about Albert was his love of his heritage and the things that he would bring in, and the things that he would wear. I remember he would dress up for in his kilt and everything when it was appropriate, and all of the things that he sacrificed all the things that he enjoyed about the sacrifices that were made by people in his heritage. So I'm going to miss him greatly. Thank you.
Lori. I want to say that I remember Albert taking care of his wife, Evelyn, and he used to bring her all the time in a wheelchair. And when he spoke of her recently, he would tear up. He was he felt things so deeply, I think. And I also wanted to say that we had a celebration of Albert once where we were doing things, Cornish. We thought he was moving away, and so he thought he was moving with family, and that didn't end up happening. But he inspired me to make Cornish pasties, which I had never done before, and he was very sweet about it. And he said that the ones that we had reminded him of the ones his mother made, and that just makes me cry to think about it. And I want to say that I'm very thankful, especially for all the people who were good friends here to Albert, and who week after week brought him here to be with us, and I think really improved the quality of his life. And that's not a small thing, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you.
I'm Judy, and many of you may know I knew Albert well before I came here from Scottish dancing. And so when I moved up here and came into church late, as I was told a long time, my birthday, there he was, Albert. And Scottish dancing, Evelyn, before she got sick, was a Scottish dancer too. And as she got more ill, he would take her in her wheelchair to the balls, and he would dance around with the wheelchair, wheelchair in the arms. He just loved her so much. He had stairs put in his house. He took care of her devotedly. He was bereft after he left, but we were here after that. And I got so used to with John taking him back and forth from Saratoga. And last Sunday, and we had many great conversations. And last Sunday when I drove him back, he was tired, but he says, I'm going to be around for a long while. My people are long life. My uncle cousin made it to 104, so I'm going to be around for a while. So when I dropped him off, I said, see you next Sunday, Albert. And he says, right, Judy, bye. And I didn't think that would be the last time. He was a wonderful person. I really cherish those times that I had with him. We had so many different conversations. You never know what he might be talking about or got off on a tangent about. And like CJ said, and Laurie, you never knew what was going to come up, but it was always interesting. So I will miss my friend.
Miranda, and I have cherished memories of spending Christmas Eve day, or part of it, with Albert several times. I brought my laptop in and we listened to lessons and carols, which started as a tradition that started in Cornwall. So never forget wonderful moments with Albert.
All right, so actually, a second memory came up. I sat in that chair with arms on it, and I recall distinctly, one of the reasons we have a chair like that is because when Reverend Dave was here, someone donated those, and so we should have chairs with arms on them for the people who need arms to get up, people like Albert. And so I sat in that chair, and it occurred to me that is memory of Albert. But the biggest memory is there is a story called Acceptance is the Answer. And here's a man, imagine this, who had so much he was hoping for, like to go back to his family. It didn't come to pass, but he demonstrated to me the willingness to accept himself living in a nursing facility, having been a medical director in such facilities for decades in the past. They aren't always places you might want to be for a whole lot of reasons. But here's a man who accepted that this is who he was going to live. He was nurtured by it, developed as someone shared the surrogate family that he had there. And so his stories the last year about the family that he found there inspired me tremendously about, again, what family really means. And of course, we were all, part of his family.
Sue didn't really know Albert very, very well. I always loved hearing his stories, and I remember one of the first times my husband Ben came here. There was a topic, and I don't even know how it got to Winnie the Pooh, and he started talking about Winnie the Pooh, and he was very emotional. I think we were all very emotional listening to him. And my husband was like crying when he left. And I looked at him and he said, "This is why I don't go to these things, because it's so emotional sometimes for me." But I think it's opened up a part of him and us that day that sometimes we're afraid to go to, because he was so deep in some ways. And there's this whole stuffed animal things I have at home of the vintage, like Winnie the Pooh things that I kind of want to bring in now, because I always thought of this one Winnie the Pooh doll we have, and I always thought of Albert every time I saw it after that. And I just wanted to read this one little thing. There's just so many Winnie the Pooh things, but the last one I think I remember him talking about was when Christopher Robin had to say goodbye to Winnie the Pooh. And it says, Christopher gathered all of his friends together and began walking down the hill. They were busy discussing the memories they had with each other. Christopher, Pooh said, looking up at Christopher as they walked hand in hand, "You aren't coming back, are you?" Christopher looked down at the ground and took a moment before he responded, "No, Pooh, I won't be coming back this time." They walked in silence, listening to the sound of the crunching leaves underneath their feet. Pooh suddenly stopped and looked intently into the ground. "I believe I'm going to miss you, Christopher," he said with a soft, broken voice. Christopher leaned down and took his lifelong friend into his arms. "I will miss you too, Pooh. I will miss you very, very much. I just think of Albert with his Pooh dolls. I hope he's happy."
Especially this on Kay. I especially want to thank Emily for bringing this together today. I just called her yesterday morning when I got the news Friday night at 12 o'clock from Nathan. And I'm so thankful you could just throw this together, and for everybody that has such great memories of Albert. He was a member since 1993. I have his cat, and his cat's doing well yet, even though he doesn't look it. It was funny because at 12 o'clock at night on Friday, I got a text from Nathan
And he said that his ashes will be flown to Seattle. So I thought this is appropriate that we have something right away, so that we can all know and think about him. And it's so funny because the old cat doesn't go out very much, but that night he went out and didn't want to come back in. It was so weird. I had to go find him after about 15 minutes, 12:30 at night. But Albert had a hard childhood. His father passed away at maybe about the age of 8. And he was put into an orphanage. And he, you know, that's part of his childhood until his mother married again, which I don't know how many years ago that was. But his father was from Cornwall, so he honored Cornwall for the rest of his life. And I think that's kind of beautiful that he still thought about his father and you know, clung to that. I made a couple. The 2019 going away party is right here. And his face says it all, you know, that people, you know, took that. And I remember, especially Eric and I, kind of planning this because it was always sort of ambiguous when exactly he was going to be leaving for Seattle. And he was so excited about leaving, so we said, well, we just gotta have a party. We just gotta have it. And it was wonderful. His cake had a picture of him with his kilt on. And it was a wonderful day, and I think he really appreciated it. And he's going back to Seattle. He wanted so badly to live there. But I think he really enjoyed being a part of this fellowship. And he so looked forward to it. And I called him the Friday night before last. I called him Saturday night. He wasn't feeling well, and I said, do you want to be picked up? And he said, yes, he really did. And I'm so glad that he could. I think it got hard towards the end. He was tired and had to go home, but so glad that he could make it and that he could be a part of this fellowship. Thank you, everybody.
You everyone for those memories. I think that we're all just a little bit feeling like Winnie the Pooh doing Christopher Robin's not gonna come back. So we're gonna have a short moment of silence and then Harley will play The White Rose. Many of you will remember that The White Rose is a song that Albert loved because it reminded him of his beloved white pebble. Raspberries and remembrance. So from one topic that's gonna make us all cry to another topic that's gonna make us all cry. When I was little, we would go to visit my Aunt Nancy in Chicago every year in the summer. And on some trips, instead of just hanging out in the pool, which was a novelty for my sister and I, who did not have a pool in the backyard, we'd go to a place like Cedar Point, which is this giant roller coaster park in Ohio. Or we'd go to the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry. Well, one year, our trip was to the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. Now, I confess I don't really remember much about what was inside of the museum. I remember that it was really dark and really cold. And I remember seeing a display of hundreds and hundreds of shoes and feeling really sick. When I looked at that website to try to find that display, I didn't see it anywhere. Like I just looked this morning again, maybe I missed it. So I may have mixed that memory with a memory of another display of shoes, or with the Washington DC museum that had something on loan from Poland, or maybe it was on loan from Poland at the time. But I remember just hundreds and hundreds of shoes and the smell of the rubber. And some of those shoes were tiny. And I remember feeling so sick that I had to go outside and wait for my family out in the garden. And I went out into the garden, into the sunlight, the cheerful warmth of the tall sunflowers that were stretching toward the sun. Life was safe and people were kind. Even secondhand or third hand, the disembodied remnants of proof that humans are capable of such inhumanity was overwhelming to me as a child. And when I think about it now, I can still feel my young self's grief pressing down onto my older self's sorrowful understanding. I was talking about this upcoming service with my sister just last week when she was here for Easter. And she told me about this documentary that she had watched a long time ago with teenagers who didn't believe in the Holocaust. And they were paired with a Holocaust survivor to have a conversation. And the teens were shown this video about the death camps, and the videos had all this footage of what they look like now as memorials in museums, with all of the beautiful rolling hills and all the grass and flowers. And they said, well, it doesn't look that bad. And the Holocaust survivor turned to her and said, honey, if there had been grass there, I would have eaten it. Grass is not nutritious for people. That statement brings it home. And it reminded me of this reading by Karen Anderson, which is in Born to Be Human. She calls the reading Gerda's Raspberry. And it says that, she says, I stopped at the Holocaust Memorial, something I had previously walked quickly past. Names of hundreds of thousands of survivors towered over me, neatly written on giant plexiglass monuments. At eye level, sayings and quotes by survivors are etched into the structures. I got stuck in front of one. The world stopped for a while as I read and reread the quote, and tears trickled out. I jotted down the quote on a piece of paper and brought it home. This tiny piece of paper received its own folder. I'd open it up and read the quote, and then refile it, only to pick it up a few days later. The words were by Gerda Weisman-Klein. She wrote, Ilsa, a childhood friend of mine, once found a raspberry in the camp and carried it in her pocket all day to present to me at night on a leaf. Imagine a world in which your entire possession is one raspberry and you give it to a friend. Anderson says, I tried to put myself in Gerda's place, in Ilsa's place, and I couldn't. Until one day, with a raspberry pint resting in my lap, I'd lift up one and think of gifts given. My mother's words of comfort the day I came home from school, humiliated that I had been the first to misspell the word in spelling bee. My sister's strong hands clutching mine as she whispered comforting words to me, past drones of machines and pumps and tubes during my ICU internment. My lover's words to me, that to him I am grace and I am home. With each thought, I ate a raspberry. Something previously unimaginable now took shape. My vessel of life was full, filled with gifts. I felt Gerda's words and life in a way I couldn't comprehend before, by getting to the gifts that were given to me, all residing within, like well-eaten raspberries. So today, when y'all came in, there were raspberries over by the hymnals. Did everybody pick up some raspberries? If you don't have raspberries, just let me know. We'll walk around with a tray. I thought we could do a brief meditation today. I think we've got a couple minutes. If you're allergic to raspberries, or if raspberries just aren't your thing, this meditation will work just as well without raspberries. I'm just going to give a second for anyone who wants raspberries. Right, does everyone have? You can open up your cup of raspberry. Just take a smell. Smell how they smell like springtime. Like you can smell the summer sun. Now hold your raspberry in your hand, your first one. And think of the time when you felt awful, when you felt low or sad or embarrassed or disappointed. You felt afraid. And someone helped you. Someone made you feel better, consoled you, defended you, held your hand and told you that the world was going to be okay. Now place this first raspberry on your tongue and let that flavor burst in your mouth. What does that taste like to you? May this raspberry be a reminder that a gift freely given can brighten a dark day, and that love and hope, just like the seeds in the garden story this morning, bloom everywhere. All right, now the second raspberry. Hold the second raspberry in your hand. Think of a time when you saw someone who needed help. What kind of help did they need? It doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something small. It can be a small improvement to someone's day. What kind of help did they need? What was your response? Feel that raspberry warmed by your skin. You place place in your mouth. Remember that you also are a giver of gifts. That you also have the power to shape the world. That all of your choices have the power to bend the arc of history towards justice. Great, thank you, everyone. So now we have hymn number 215 from Singing the Living Tradition. It's called Praise to the Living God. And the words to this one are actually based on the Yidel, which are the 13 articles of the Jewish faith. It was probably written by, this is Between the Lines, which has all the history of all of our hymns. It was probably written by Daniel ben Judah Dayan between 1396 and 1404. And then it was updated in 1770 by Thomas Olivers, an English Methodist. And in 1880, Rabbi Max Landsberg of Temple Bereth Kodesh in Rochester, New York, asked Newton Mann, the minister of the Unitarian Church there, to make a more exact translation. So what you're reading now is a slightly updated, to make it less gender biased, a slightly updated version that's gone through years and years and years, and then it came together as a Jewish rabbi and a Unitarian minister collaborating to make it nice and to make it for us to sing. So, 215, Praise to the Living God. Today are by Deborah Hafner. These words were written for Passover, Passover like Easter was last week, but Passover too is a story of struggle and resistance and liberation. Hafner writes, "We are on a journey. We didn't plan it, we didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in the wilderness, hungry and thirsty, and doubting that we should ever have come. But look around, We are not alone. It is our journey together, a journey to our better selves, a journey to a better world, a journey to a more promised land. So now is the time in our service where we share our joys and sorrows. We've moved this time of connection to the end of the service so that we can feel free to share details of our lives that we don't want to have broadcast on. Chalice. If you'll join me in reading the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of divinity. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. The closing words this morning are a quote from the Twitter account of the Auschwitz Memorial from November 26th, 2018. When we look at Auschwitz, we see the end of the process. It's important to remember that the Holocaust actually did not start with gas chambers. This hatred gradually developed from words and stereotypes and prejudice through legal exclusion, dehumanization, and escalating violence. So because Yom HaShoah is about resisting, it's important for us to remember that resistance begins with our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of each person. When we look at people as individuals who love just like we do, and who suffer just like we do, we resist the temptation to treat people as other. And that resistance to the world, that resistance to that idea that the world is separated into us and them, that is what will keep us on the path as we journey, like Deborah Hafner said, into a better world. So amen, shalom, salam, blessed be, and thank you so much for joining us today.